an hour of change and challenge, in a decade of hope and fear, in an age of both knowledge and ignorance. The greater our knowledge increases, the greater our ignorance unfolds.
I don't have anything to prove to anybody. That's real. That's real, man. And something just told me not to buy them anymore. And I don't think I will.
Despite the fact that this nation's own scientific manpower is doubling every 12 years in a rate of growth more than 3 times that of our population as a whole, despite that, the vast stretches of the unknown and the unanswered and the unfinished still far outstrip our collective comprehension.
And folks, you're listening to the Nocturnal Journal. I'm Sean Forker with Maz Adams and Dave Groves. Tonight we're going to be joined by Cliff Barackman. And Cliff is just one hell of a guy. You folks know him through Finding Bigfoot, and we know him from just being, well, one of the Bigfoot research guys that we've communicated with over the years. So it's going to be a real pleasure for him to join us here in just a couple moments. Go ahead, Maz, and take it away. I just called you Adams. Go ahead, Maz.
Hey, man, I'll answer almost anything. So that's pretty good with me. That's okay. Obviously, Cliff, we thank you for joining us tonight. We're definitely honored, and I know that people listening are very much looking forward to that. Obviously, you're a classic monster fan, which hopefully we'll touch on a little later. A love for Godzilla and King Kong and those kind of creatures. And we're the Nocturnal Journal here, so we mainly focus on Bigfoot, but we're also going to be branching off and talk about other creatures that go bump in the night. So my question for you is going to start out with one that seems to be popular recently. I just want to hear your thoughts on the Dogman, which seems to be picking up steam. From what I understand, this is a cryptid that has been around for a while, but it seems like reports are really picking up recently. Why do you think it's become so popular as of now, as opposed to previously?
One of those hundredth monkey sort of things, that when enough people suddenly become aware of something strange and anomalous like that, it just increases and kind of snowballs, Because again, like Sasquatches and whatnot, as far as I can tell, they're just a perfectly normal biological thing. But that's not to say that there's not other weird, spooky, scary things and weird, unexplainable, more supernatural sort of things out there. I just don't profess any special knowledge about them. So,
and that actually leads me perfectly into something else I wanted to ask you, going back to the fact that we're the Nocturnal Journal. As far as other creatures, obviously we know where you stand on Bigfoot, and we've discussed, the Dogman right now. Do you have any thoughts on any other paranormal or cryptozoological creatures? Do you believe in ghosts, aliens, Jersey Devil, Chupacabra? Do you have any opinions on any of those?
Yeah, absolutely. It's not very strong opinions because, I've spent my life chasing Bigfoots and stuff, and I hear very uninformed or ill-informed people telling me why Bigfoots could not possibly be real because of this or that. Or the Bigfoot's are a certain way because of this or that and stuff. And so I don't profess any real true knowledge about any of these other subjects. I'm the uninformed about those, so I'm on the other side of the fence about those subjects. But as far as like ghosts, yeah, I've had a couple really weird ghosty sort of things happen to me. I know a lot of people actually who have had ghosty sort of things happen to them. UFOs, enough people report things in the sky. Of course, a lot of those people don't know what they're looking at and aren't familiar with the astronomical, plausible explanations, the other sort of things that they could be. But the fact is, people see weird things in the sky. And if if you look at the strange phenomenon that, weird folks like us get into, the stuff that I think is most likely to be real are the phenomenon that persist through the ages and are reported irrelevant of culture. And those sort of things are like UFOs, things in the sky, ghosts and spirits, hairy bipeds, And of course, last but not least, slithery lake and river and sea monster sort of things. I think that those are the big four that we should be looking towards as far as real phenomenon that we might have some sort of glimmer of hope of explaining in some way.
Oh, it's a very good point. Harkening back to cultures, because obviously, a lot of this stuff, especially Bigfoot, goes back to different cultures and things like that. And I know you touched on it a little bit already. Obviously, we said you had a love of monsters as a kid, and maybe some of your love for the Wolfman and werewolves spurred love for Bigfoot. Do you remember the time when that kind of transition happened, and what was responsible for transitioning from the fictional to the supposed non-fictional in Bigfoot?
Yeah. Actually, it was that's the story of me being at college and having a few-hour break in between classes on upper campus, like way far away from, like the music department where I was studying, or my car, or I couldn't get off campus for lunch, so I just hang out way up on top of upper campus at Cal State Long Beach, and I'd go into the library and then rummage through the library in just kind of picking books off the shelf in subjects that I was interested in, mostly sciences and stuff, And one day I rolled into the anthropology department and ran across the Halpin and Ames book, Man-Like Monsters on Trial, which is basically a collection of scholarly papers written about the Sasquatch from the perspective of both physical and cultural anthropologists. And it was by reading that book that I realized, like, holy crap, Bigfoots aren't not only are they quirky and scary and wolfmen and blah, 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 everything that I've loved as a kid, but they might be real. And since I was already camping and all that sort of stuff, I just put that idea into my backpack, so to speak, and unpacked it when I was out in the woods and started Bigfooting when I was out there. So that's when it was. It wasn't something that happened to me in the woods. It wasn't I saw something I couldn't explain. It was actually kind of an academic and theoretical pursuit of the knowledge about the background of these creatures. And once you start building a foundation of the data that's out there, it's very difficult, in my opinion, to write the whole thing off as a hoax. Like, why would it be that Native Americans, pretty much without exception, who live in the same habitat that Sasquatches, all have a name for a critter just like that in their respective languages? Like, they didn't all get together and say, let's pull one over on the future dominant culture. Like, what the people, we're gonna be eventually run out of our lands and stuff. Let's play a trick on them 1,000 years before they show up. And that just doesn't make sense. There would have to be some sort of thing about that, like for the Native American perspective alone, in my opinion, should be enough proof to turn heads and make the subject the center of query for like serious academics.
Absolutely.
So Cliff, obviously you said you really got into the subject when you were in college. Nowadays there's enough stigma for guys like Sean and Dave and I, who profess our belief and our passion for Bigfoot. What was it like for a younger Cliff back then? Were you very open about your passion for Bigfoot? What were people like with that?
Oh, yeah, I was very open about it. And in fact, through some periods of my life, almost in your face about it. Because being a kid, you're a little bit more arrogant than when you grow up or whatever and start maturing a little bit. And trust me, I'm super mature still. That's why I think I was a good teacher. But back then, it was like I had a secret that I knew, and I'd love to share it with everybody, and I felt like I knew something that perhaps this guy didn't. Let's talk about it. Let me enlighten you. But, that's a pretty arrogant sort of perspective, is like let me tell you what the truth is. What a lame thing to do. I've kind of grown out of that in a lot of ways. But yeah, I was very open with it. And I would talk to anybody about Bigfoot. I'd strike up conversations wherever I went if I could, because I was just hungry for more information. And every once in a while, you'd find somebody who had seen one or had more information that would lead me somewhere else. So yeah, I had nothing to hide. I wore my Bigfoot badge proudly and prominently. I waved my freak flag high.
Amen. You waved that flag.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sean actually stitched our freak flag. He's very handy with a needle.
I'm also a seamstress. Wait a minute. Handy with a needle is going to get us a whole other audience.
Oh,
I don't
God.
want. So.
He's the Betsy Ross of weirdos, right?
Yeah. It's bad enough we have the following we do, let alone. I digress.
Oh, so I was just going to say, Cliff, I had a kind of a, I guess, offbeat question for you. I don't know. A few years back, I know actually South Park playfully poked fun at the Finding Bigfoot phenomenon, as they usually do with anything in pop culture. I just was curious, Were you a fan of the show before? Are you a fan now? What were your feelings on that?
Oh, I was a fan of the show before, and I still love the show. It's, as far as I can tell, it's one of the only good things on TV. It's clever, it's offensive, it pushes the boundaries, like it's art in a way that a lot of other television shows simply aren't. And when we heard we were going to be featured, we kind of thought, we were wondering, like, what would they do with it? Because we just heard a rumor, like, oh, they might have got a hold of us or something. Like, oh, that's cool, you know. And it was, well, we're starting to think, like, well, guy, I mean, I guess. Well, clearly Moneymaker would be Cartman. I mean, there's no doubt about that. I mean, I'm assuming that I would have to be Butters, you know. There's a character on there named Jimbo that wears a hat that reminds me a lot of Bobo. I'm assuming that would be, you know, and we're thinking, well, who would Renee be? And, you know, we toss it around. But when it came out that not only did they do a parody of us, but they actually used likenesses of us, I was humbled and honored. Bobo was furious, of course, because they made him look pretty bad. But I was humbled and honored, and I was really stoked. And because not a lot of people can say that, you know, that they were not only that the show was mentioned on South Park, but I mean, there's a South Park cliff. That's pretty cool. I mean, as far as like bucket list stuff, that was a bucket list item I didn't even know I had. And you know, it's interesting. This past season, I think it was this past season on South Park. I don't know. There's so many seasons now, I get them all confused. They had some sort of Black Friday episode where there was murder and mayhem and stuff like that. Apparently, Renee and I were in the crowd. We were at they used our likenesses again for extras, basically. We were in the background in the crowd, and some fan sent me a screenshot of it. And then Renee actually piped up again, I guess, you know, a couple episodes later. This whole season's been about a troll, like an internet troll, and the troll was online on somebody's Facebook or something, and they were on Renee's Facebook saying, you know, something offensive or whatever on her Facebook because they were trolling her, but it was her picture in the upper right hand corner, left hand corner. So that's kind of fun too. It's like when a fan sent me like, oh, you're in this season too. No kidding. So that adds to the fun, the fact that we might just pop up again. You know, that's kind of cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Well, what a thrill. I mean, I love South Park. I love satire. I love harsh, biting criticism of the culture because there's a whole lot out there to criticize. And I just think they're hilarious. In fact, we signed autographs for the guys. One of our camera guys lived down in Venice, and I guess the South Park Studios or whatever, the production company, is based out of Venice, a few blocks from where the camera guy lives. So we all signed, you know, our Finding Bigfoot, you know, postcard, you know, autograph things, and sent it in like, thanks, it was an honor, and blah blah blah. And Bobo just gave him a big F you.
Oh my God. You know what? I'm so glad I asked, because I something I've been meaning to ask. I watch this show religiously. I'm glad to find out you're a big fan, and yeah, I mean, it's got to be pretty cool to be immortalized in 2D, and you're amongst great company with so many celebrities. And I know I've watched like videos and stuff like that. They literally work so fast and so hard to turn it in right before. So I'm glad you were such a good sport about that, and you have the right attitude, man. So kudos to you.
Oh, well, you know, I really don't take myself all that seriously, and I work hard not to take Bigfoot too seriously. So an opportunity to, you know, get my silly face out there in the public and the culture that way, that's pretty cool. And there aren't a whole lot of shows that can say that, first of all. You know, and actually, you know, another thing that kind of stems off that is like, what a cool opportunity to not only do, you know, things like a South Park, whatever, you know, we're on the Colbert Report and stuff like that, but the show's kind of affected culture in some interesting ways. Like the word squatch, you know, except for like a few hundred of us weirdos, the word squatch didn't really exist before the show. And yeah, now we have, you know, the beef jerky guys calling their things squatch, and it's everywhere. It's super interesting. Everybody knows what that is now.
And it's cool. I mean, you guys literally have been part of the driving force to make Bigfoot research cool again. And it gave some people the ability that really, you know, enjoyed being part of it to not really have to hide and, admit that they do this stuff. It's really cool.
I'm very fortunate to be riding on this vehicle. So yeah, I do recognize that, and there's a certain responsibility there too. You know, because I realized a long time ago actually that, you know, Finding Bigfoot, like it or not, is the in search of the new, you know, generation.
Yeah, it
basically.
is.
And since In Search Of and all those shows played such a huge role in my own, cryptozoological development, I recognize that responsibility on my part, which is why I try to keep it not only fun and engaging, but slightly educational if possible, and 100% real whenever possible. So, yeah, I think we do our best.
Out of the woodwork.
What was that, Dave?
It's brought many people out, to be able to talk about it too. I think is their experience that might have had a sighting or an encounter or whatnot. It makes it easier to talk about since your show's been airing. I think, that's a big part of it too. Is it just makes it okay to talk about I had a sighting or whatnot.
It certainly has lightened the stigma. Yeah, the stigma just isn't there as heavily as it was.
And just lightly touching on the show, Cliff. Obviously, it's a double-edged sword for a lot of people. There's a lot of fans and a big following, and it's really brought it to the forefront, as you said, which is a great thing. So there are a lot of people that are critical of it as a TV show. If there's something you could say to the fans and to the critics that may be a misconception about the show, what would it be?
Well, I think that the biggest misconception would probably be about other shows, kind of. And let me put that in context of our show. And I'm not pointing fingers, or I'm not going to name names or anything, but there are some shows out there that are purely fictional. And people believe them and eat them up, and people get together with, like, they send like emails to me, like, why don't you go work with so-and-so from that show? Why don't you go work with those guys? They find something every time. And I'm thinking, well, that's why we don't go work with them, because it's made up. They find something every time. That's not Bigfooting. I mean, one thing I'm proud to say is that on Finding Bigfoot, what you see is what we really do and what we really say, what we really think. We're not told what to do, say, or think, or portray, even, for that matter. Like here's the truth. This is as brutally honest as I can get. Television is meant to be entertaining. Okay, that's the bottom line. Because real Bigfooting, if you've been doing it, it's fairly boring. You're out in the dark all night long. Usually nothing happens. That's a crappy TV show. It's like one of the worst ones I can imagine. No lights. You don't see anybody on screen, and nothing happens. That's the off channel on your television. You can watch that all day long. So you have to have stuff happen. You have to make the banter between the characters interesting. You have to talk. I get all these hunters all the time. You're not going to find anything if you keep talking. Well, no kidding, but it's TV. But if we say that's a Bigfoot, we really do think that's a Bigfoot. If we say, whatever we say, I think you saw one, I don't think you saw one. But that's the truth. As fictional as our show gets, it's like, what? We sometimes don't have to take sporty ATVs to the night investigation spot. That's television. That's what makes it fun. That's what keeps the kids engaged. That's what makes it a television show. But when we're out in the woods, that's the real deal. We go to the best Bigfoot spots with the most recent activity that we possibly can, and that's why we have such a phenomenal success rate. Like, what is it? Like half episodes we hear something that might be a Bigfoot or something like that. I'm guessing I'm just making up half. I don't really know what the statistic is. But that's why we have such a good success rate, is because a lot of times we're at a spot that's on private land where somebody saw a Bigfoot a week and a half ago. On the screen, it may say we're 30 miles north of Pikes Peak in Colorado somewhere, but, in real life, we're on a private piece of property that we guaranteed the property owner we would not tell them where we're going to be, show it on the screen, or identify it in any way, and we're out on his 600 acres, and there's a Bigfoot there, and I think that's kind of cool. So if you can take away just a little bit of that, the location exactness, or, we had to take a hot air balloon. Oh, that was actually a really good time, actually. Let me take that back. We had to take a submarine that drills through the planet core to get to the night investigation spot. Well, that's Bigfoot, man. That's Bigfoot TV. And I'm okay with giving up that amount as long as we can do all the Bigfoot stuff, which is, in my mind, the only important thing about the show. All the Bigfoot stuff is 100% legitimate. We don't lie. We don't fake. We don't plant evidence. Producers that have tried to do so in the past we've got to deal with the network. They are immediately fired, and they fly home the next day, never to work for the show again.
Wow.
And over the last 6 years, or 10 seasons, 6 years, we've fired, I think, 3 producers all the first 2 seasons.
Wow.
since then, we don't ask people on board. So skeptics, say what you want. I'm not skeptics about Bigfoot. People who are skeptical about the show, the show sucks. All right, well, guess what? We're making television for a huge audience. We have to vanilla it out a little bit. But the Bigfooting is real. And to me, that's the heart of the show. The witnesses and the Bigfooting is the heart of the show, and it's 100% legitimate, guaranteed.
Yeah, keep it up. I mean, the other thing, when you guys are doing the witness interviews, you have no problem questioning them. I mean, that's honesty. You're not agreeing with everything they're saying, or there's some smart questions being answered, and you just keep that up. That's great, man. I'm glad to hear what you just said. That's phenomenal.
It's fantastic perspective.
The producers have given us a really interesting opportunity, and the reality of the show has a lot to do with it. I mean, our producers and camera guys and sound guys, they work on other shows. They do other stuff all the time. And they tell us that, Finding Bigfoot is the most real reality show they've ever worked on. Like an example of that is the town hall meetings. On TV, you guys get 4 to 6 minutes or something like that of the highlights of the town hall. Usually focused on the witnesses that we're going to go investigate later, but not always. Real life, I don't know if you've ever been to a town hall, if you've ever had a chance to sit into one of these things, they're 2.5 to 6 hours long, or 6 might be a little exaggeration, but 4.5 or 5 is not. Like 2.5 to say 4 hours long on average. And we talk to every witness in the hall. And in the meantime, the producers, they already have a couple witnesses that if nothing else pops up that really grabs us, we can certainly go do those witnesses at the location. They've already set aside that because they're making TV and they have to make sure that we do something. But the 4 cast members, we get to choose who we want to investigate. So the producers have some people set aside, but it's up to us. And whoever we choose, unless there's some really crazy situation that we just can't work around, whoever we choose, the producers somehow have to scramble and make that happen within a day or two. And they do it for us. They work their butts off for us. Couldn't ask for a better team, a better set of producers. They'll do anything for us, and our goal is Bigfoot.
Well, I just want to thank you for that answer. That was probably better than I could have ever expected. It's obvious to anyone who's going to be
pretty long
listening.
too. Sorry about that.
No, not at all. It was great, and anyone who's going to be listening, it's evident that your passion for the subject. So I just want to ask you one last Finding Bigfoot question, and I want to move on to the actual subject. Obviously, you've been doing this, I believe, for like over 20 years now. When you started it, obviously you never dreamed that you'd have, be on TV. That wasn't the end game. Before you started, and they had come to you and asked you the possibility, did you contemplate how your life might change? And basically, how has the reality of that matched your expectations?
The show, you mean? Like when I was considering being on the show or not? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah. Did you realize that how it might just change your life as far as either being recognized or just having to deal with
Yeah. I absolutely. I called some friends who had some previous television experience, and they gave me a variety of answers from, why not, to absolutely not, don't do it. It kind of ran the gamut, depending on what kind of show they were involved in. And I'd say the first couple of years were very rocky and kind of hard, and it's kind of leveled off since then, and it's still not easy for me personally to be on the road. And like to live that kind of lifestyle, because it's kind of like I'm in a touring rock band or something. Yeah, you make your money on the road. Like my job is to make television, but Bigfooting is my life. So that means my job takes me away from home, and that's difficult for me. I don't like it very much. Being on the road 6, 7, 8 months a year. Here's the schedule, and you can see why it may wear on you after 6 years. On the road between 6.5 and 8 months a year. We usually do like 2 or 3 episodes in a row. So we're on the road for about 5 weeks or so. I get a week or 2 down at home. Then I'm on the road for another 5 weeks, and another week or 2 down. And it's kind of just like you just repeat that cycle until however many episodes the network are filmed. And that takes me away for a long time, away from my home. I don't sleep in my bed, away from my dog, away from my loved ones, away from my musical opportunities and passions, away from my Bigfoot spots that I want to investigate, away from, you name it, away from everything, away from Cliff. And I'm on the road being Cliff from Finding Bigfoot. I much prefer to be Cliff at home than Cliff from Finding Bigfoot, although I'm thankful for that latter personality. I don't think that I really appreciated that level of change when I was contemplating this employment. But I'm thankful for it. Don't misconstrue what I'm saying as not being thankful. I'm deeply thankful for it. It's given me opportunities to learn things I would have never learned, to go places I would have never gone, etc. But don't mistake it as being a glamorous or easy lifestyle. So
yeah, that road diet alone is not always the greatest, right?
No, not at all. Not at all. It's like, I try to hike and be healthy and work out and eat right when I'm home, because I know that, the next 3.5 months while I'm gone shooting these next 6 or 8 or something, I'm just being subjected to whatever I can get. We're not eating like corn dogs out of, 7-Elevens or anything like that. They treat us pretty well, especially since we're in the woods all the time. The catering is actually really nice. We don't have a catering truck or anything. We have like a hot box, that they bring out. Then we eat standing up or on the car hood in swamps where the mosquitoes are pestering us, or where we, in 30-degree weather. It doesn't matter. We're eating out in the woods. That's what we do. We live out in the woods, basically. We sleep in a bed because camera guys and sound guys and producers have to, fill out paperwork and email this back and forth and recharge batteries and stuff. But, we work probably 6 to 18 hours a day on average. We've put in days that were 23, 25 hours. And we've had other days that we didn't have to work. We just got lucky. So 6 days a week. And then that 1 day a week is kind of spent, that 1 day a week, that precious 1 day a week when it comes, we maybe try to see some local thing, try to catch a movie, do some laundry, and, find a good beer.
There you go.
And that brings us to the part of the podcast that I've been looking forward to the most. I know these guys have as well. Obviously, those who know you or anything about you know you're a cast sweaty. You love collecting casts, copying casts, as do I, as you know. What is it about casts in particular as a piece of evidence that you find so compelling?
It's hard evidence that is actually can be examined objectively by experts and come to their own interpretation. When you deal with eyewitnesses, the other most prevalent form of information or data on Sasquatch is you're dealing with a lot of filters, like how good of an observer is this person? What were they able to see based on the lighting conditions, the distance, and then you come into the really bad filters, which are how does this person interpret what they see based on their own worldview and experience? What sort of language skills does this person have to be able to put their actual experience and interpretation into words to convey that meaning to you, the Bigfoot researcher who's listening? And of course, and then what kind of language skills do you, the Bigfoot researcher, have to interpret and then get it right? So you see my point. Lots and lots of filters. But with a Bigfoot or a footprint cast or a hand cast or what have you, you can hand the thing to a dude and say, what do you think? And then they have an opportunity to weigh in based on their own level of knowledge, expertise, and experience. Certainly footprints and whatnot given to an anatomist, their opinion would be heavier, I suppose, like would weigh more in public debate than, say, the grocer. But still, it's something that somebody can hold and look at and observe objectively. Important thing about photographs, as far as evidence goes, what they tell us is a whole other area that's super important to me. They can tell us, like any tracker will tell you that footprint, no matter what it is, a deer, a bear, a human, a Bigfoot, footprint trails tell a story. It's a little snapshot of a few moments in that animal's life, and that animal is out there living all the time, 24 hours a day, but we're privy to 30 seconds of it as it moves across the terrain until it loses us somehow. What was it doing? How fast was it going? What direction was it going? Why was it going there? Was it alone? Was it running or walking at the time? What sort of dynamics can we see in the feet? How does the foot interact with the substrate as it walks? And what does that tell us about the way Sasquatches are made, like what their anatomy is like? There's so much there. It tells us about their social habits, like their family groups, the size of their territory and range, possible population estimates. Like I can go on and on. Footprints are a treasure trove of information about the species.
Wow, that's I get excited just hearing about that. These are all great points. And all I was just wondering, obviously you have a vast collection and it's always growing. I know people are always emailing you. You always have contacts. If there's one footprint in your collection, which I know it's hard to narrow it down to, that if it didn't exist, one cast, you think the community would lose the most from? So in other words, one that you find to be the most compelling, what do you think it would be?
I can't think of one footprint that shows a feature that other footprints don't show also. So that's a hard question to answer. And the first thing that jumped to my mind was not a cast, but the fact that no one cast in isolation tells us enough to even be real. But when you look at casts in context of the entire data set or whatever happened at that scene at that particular time, or from that one individual Sasquatch, if their footprints are found again and again and again over and over, that's where the information lies. It's not in one individual footprint. Take for example the Patterson cast, the Patterson-Gimlin film Creature that Lyle Laverty photographed and then Bob Titmus eventually cast when he returned to the PG site 10 days after the filming. That one of the big mid-tarsal break or mid-tarsal ridge in the middle of it and stuff. There's plenty of casts that show the mid-tarsal ridge in the cast that hints to the mid-tarsal break in the foot and the flexibility in the mid part of the foot. But it's not one cast that shows it, or even, quote, I'll say proves it, even though that's not proof. It's just strong evidence for that theory or hypothesis. But in this case, I think it qualifies for theory, not a hypothesis anymore. It's that cast and the cast from 1991 from the Blue Mountains, and the one from Biscuit Ridge in the same around the same time frame, and the one from China, and I can go on and on. It's that cast with the others that makes that one cast significant. So there's not one cast that, like, without that cast, we'd all be lost. There is no such thing anymore. There's enough data that the most impressive thing about any cast is the congruency between what it shows and the rest of the data set, from unrelated people, unrelated Bigfoots, unrelated locations, and different times. That's where the power of the footprint data lies.
And I think just kind of going off of that, obviously this might go back to being narrow-minded, but I think, Dave, you had a question as far as how Cliff interprets a caster on a cast-by-cast basis. Right?
No, I was more concerned for educational purposes for the listeners. If someone's out in the woods, what would your 3 to 5 things looking at a footprint be to? I mean, of course, you're going to cast everything. When in doubt, cast. But do you have 3 or 5 points on a footprint when you're looking at it, not the cast, the footprint itself in the ground, that would really get a person excited? Any specific traits? I mean, we all have our own, but I'm speaking more for just an overall 3 to 5 points on a cast or on a print.
Well, let's say that there's hypothetically, let's say that you're hiking down the trail and there's a nice, beautiful footprint right in the middle of the trail. Either, let's say, going perpendicular to the trail you're walking on. The first thing you need to do is, look for the rest of them. No Sasquatch, drops in from the sky, parachutes in, and then hops out on one foot. There's more, and a trained tracker should be able to find sign of its tracking, or of its where it went, basically. Now, I'm not a trained tracker. I'm a hobbyist tracker, and I don't profess to be anything more than that. I do have a little bit more than the average person's knowledge about Sasquatch feed, but based on the data and blah, blah, blah. But I'm not a trained tracker, but even I can find some sign of something moving around, a little bit at least, because there's never just one. Now, of course, depending on how long it's been since the Sasquatch was there, that's going to limit a lot of the stuff that might be potentially found. And then the terrain that they move through is not usually conducive to tracking at all. A good example, this past July, we were in Minnesota filming for Finding Bigfoot, and this episode hasn't aired yet, so a little bit of spoilers in a way. We landed, I think, on the 5th in Minnesota after a short break. Some guy saw Bigfoot on the 5th. A guy named Don Sherman, a local man, went out to the location and spoke to the witness there and cast a footprint at the location. The 7th went by, and the 8th we heard about it, and we had the opportunity to go out and visit the spot and stuff. And it's a great sighting report. There's really interesting things about it, but that footprint cast exists. Don Sherman only cast one. There were 2 others. They got drowned by a rainstorm by the time we got there, so there's nothing we can do about it. and the rainstorm obliterated all sign of this thing's passing in the surrounding brush. But again, there were 3 indications of it passing through. So the first thing is find the rest of the prints. Find something else, because sometimes the best prints might be hid underneath like a level of plants, in the forest floor, like salal or something. Maybe there's something else going on. Maybe there's hair samples. Who knows? The next thing is measure and photograph everything. Measure and photo absolutely everything, and not just one picture either. Minimum 5 photographs per footprint. Minimum. And I say that because the very least any self-respecting Bigfooter can do is photograph it from the top, the front, the back, the left, and the right. That's 5 total, all with a scale on them. The more pictures you take, the better. Video is even better than that. Video from all angles, and here's why. Technology is pretty much there at this point, where if you have enough photographs of something in the ground, you can feed all of those pictures into a computer program, a piece of software, and it'll construct a 3-dimensional model that you can rotate, just like Dr. Meldrum's virtual footprint archive. I've been playing a little bit with that with a Orang Pendek cast I have in my house and stuff. They make it for your phone. There's certainly stuff out there so they can take little clips from the videos and all these photographs and feed it in and do that now. Then you have a virtual copy of the footprint in the ground before you cast it. So that would be another one. Photograph, 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 document, over-document, over-document again. You cannot write too much stuff down. You don't have to use it later, but you're going to be happy that you have it. Right. So all right, there's two or 3 points, and I've been talking for what seems like hours. So how much longer do you want me to go on?
No, that's fine. I mean, as far as looking at a track, though, what would you say? You can look at one and say that's human. You're not even going to look at it again.
You can't always do that.
Okay.
But the first thing I look for, because I get a whole lot of human footprints in the ground from people who say they're Bigfoot footprints. The one way you can there's a couple ways you can differentiate those two. First thing, one thing you can look at, not necessarily the first thing I would look at, but one thing you can look at is the pinky toe. Almost always in human footprints, the pinky toe is curled underneath. And as well as the 4th digit as well. The 4th and 5th, the 5th digit always is, the pinky toe is always curved under, because we wear shoes. A whole lifetime of you wearing shoes kind of squishes your feet up like that, and that's why your feet do that. It's less pronounced in like say native Brazilian tribes who've never worn shoes. And when I was in Brazil, I had the opportunity to photograph a lot of footprints from the local Brazilian tribe who never wore shoes in the sand. So I've learned a lot from doing that. Another thing that human prints have, but Sasquatch prints generally don't, not always, but generally don't, is humans, when we're walking, when we lift our ankle up and the forefoot, the ball of the foot pushes us forward, the greatest pressure seems to fall on the heads of the metatarsals, which basically means like right behind the toe stems. That place where the toe bones meet the longer bones in the foot. The toe bones are called phalanges and the longer bones are called metatarsals. And that's where the pressure of the foot comes down. And therefore, there's almost always a push off there. And sometimes raises a ridge that many ill-informed Bigfooters say is a mid-tarsal ridge. But it's not, because it's too far forward on the foot. That's the consequence of pushing off the fore part of the ball, not the rear part of the ball, where the actual mid-tarsal hinge or joint or whatever you want to call it is. So that raised ridge, if it's there at all, should be pretty much in the middle of the foot, not towards the front at all. The middle or slightly behind the middle of the foot. And sometimes it doesn't come as a ridge. Sometimes it comes as like a section of substrate that has become dislodged from the ground and gets pushed back, like in a disc or something like that. There's some excellent cast examples of that. So when you're looking at human prints versus Bigfoot prints, if you think they're Bigfoot prints, show me that the ridge is not forward in the foot. Because if it is, that's a human print. I had that happen at that Bigfoot conference. What was it? The Sasquatch Summit at Ocean Shores just a few weeks ago. Very kind woman who's very smart and very woodsy, and she came in and with these casts, and what do you think? And said, well, they're people prints. And why? And I had to, go through it and like I just did with you guys, and point it out on those casts. Like, this is why, right here. This is what you look for. Those are human, and that's why. So that's the 2 best ways to differentiate human to Sasquatch.
Great, that's really good information. Thank you.
Well,
just hanging out.
Cliff, so obviously, the more you do this, like anybody who does anything, the more evidence you have collected as far as casts go, I'm sure you learn more, and your opinion might change on some of the things that you have. Are there any casts in your collection where you might have flip-flopped or might be thinking one way or the other after more experience?
Well, the most glaring example is, of course, the London tracks. When I first found the London tracks, they fooled me. I mean, I'll be totally honest. Nothing wrong with that. And it was only because I cast so many of them and had time to sit down with them and really get into them that I finally figured out that they're almost certainly hoaxed. Almost certainly. I cannot imagine a circumstance that these things are not hoaxed. And the whole thing is because here, let me back up a bit. One of the best things you can do with any Bigfoot evidence is try to prove it wrong. It's not a null hypothesis thing. You try to prove it wrong. And if you can replicate it through false means, then it's probably hoax. It's probably false. So that's what I did with the London tracks. I was sitting on them for a while, and of course, work took me away from home. I couldn't address them like I wanted to, but eventually I was looking at these things thinking, I was kind of comparing to the LB tracks, if you remember that pretty famous hoax from about the same time. So I was looking at these things, and I was thinking, you know what? I need to make fake tracks. I need to make some hoaxed tracks so I can learn about them. Because I was always hesitant, to have a fake set of stompers around, because then I might get accused of faking stuff. Or same reason I don't own a monkey suit. Like if I own a monkey suit and I somehow score with a Bigfoot piece of footage, like people are going to think I hoaxed it. So I've never had those things. But then I was thinking of Moneymaker one day, and Matt is, of course, kind of controversial, I guess, because he's burned some bridges and he runs a great group and all this other stuff. But the guy knows his stuff. I mean, say what you want about Matt. He knows his stuff by and large. He's not always right, but he knows a lot about the subject. And something he said, you can't be an expert in Bigfoot films unless you're an expert in fake Bigfoot films. And he's absolutely right. And I was thinking, that's true of footprint casts as well. So I took a page out of Moneymaker's thing and said, I'm going to address this idea with Matt's idea, So I called up the guy who was publicly pointed out to be the guy behind the LB hoax. I called him up and I go, hey man, you don't happen to know anybody with a fake set of stompers around, do you, that I could borrow and do some experiments with? And he astonished me by saying, I don't, but I'll make you some. I've always wanted to. I went, holy God. And I was thinking, why wouldn't he just give me the ones he used, But actually, through talking to this guy for quite a bit, I think we've become friends, in a weird sort of way, I mean, he's a good guy, and I have nothing against him personally, but even in the Bigfoot world, kind of friends, because skeptics are important, and he doesn't think Bigfoots are real, and it's important for us who think they are to be able to defend our position just like he would have to, right? But anyway, he made me a set of fake stompers. It turns out, by the way, he called him in, a friend of his. And when I asked for, who did it? And he was, I'm not going to tell you, dude. I mean, when my name got associated with this, I got death threats. People said they were going to burn my house down with my family inside of it. Like, why would I out my friend if the Bigfoot community was so unfriendly to me? He's my friend. I'm not going to do that to him. Now, you know what? Fair enough. None of my business who did it, as long as we know it's not real. That's what really matters. Oh, anyway, so he made me a fake set of stompers. So I've been out tromping around the woods in these stompers and casting my own footprints to see what signature traces they leave. And I can find those same traces in the London tracks. But luckily, I mean, I'm not, like Bigfoot isn't a religion for me, I'm not married to this thing. Like it's good. And since I'm approaching Bigfoot from a scientific perspective, I actually benefit in a lot of ways. I think we all benefit by me being wrong. Most people would never admit they're wrong for whatever ego reasons they may have. But science is one of those areas that if you actually prove yourself wrong, you're lauded as a hero. And again, I'm not trying to be a hero or anything like that, but it's one of those things, like the Bigfoot world kind of burns my britches, so to speak, in a lot of ways, because of all the egos and stuff involved. And so much of it can just be navigated around by saying, I was wrong about that, but I still think they're real. Or something like that, something just like truthful and simple. Like, oh yeah, I was wrong. And that's where I found myself with the London tracks. And I was wrong. The toe movement that I observed, and then people always ask, well, what about the toe movement? Because they still want the tracks to be real. And I said, well, what about the toe movement? I said, well, the toe movement that I observed was a vertical toe movement. Like there was not movement, but differentiation and depth of the toes. That can be duplicated with a wooden stomper. In none of the 72 London tracks that I have do I observe horizontal toe splay, the splaying of the toes. None of them. And that's what raised the red flags for me to begin that investigation in the first place. I didn't see something that I feel I should have, so I investigated further, and I came to the conclusion that these are hoaxed. Well, let's ramble on and on about this. And the important, I keep going on and on because it was such a powerful and important learning opportunity for me. A lot of people go, oh man, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry the London tracks are fake. Why? Look how much more prepared I am now. Look how much more I've learned about the subject and about their feet and about real tracks. I cannot regret the London tracks nor the LB tracks because they've taught me so much. Why would I regret? It's like regretting being an 11th grader. No, it might have been a pain in the ass to turn in that history assignment, but you know what? I learned a lot from it. I couldn't have gone on to 12th grade without it.
I think you just shared a really good point, though. As a Bigfoot research community, we don't progress as fast as we should on things because some folks get really tied up in wanting their evidence to be real to the point it blinds them of what the truths are. We want things to be real footprints or real hair follicles or whatnot, that we blind ourselves to the truths for it. And we don't go forward as often as we should or as fast as we should because we get hung up on the past too much.
Well, yeah, there's an emotional attachment to the evidence or the lack of evidence for that matter. There's a whole arm of the Bigfoot community that doesn't want any supporting data to their ideas. This is what happened. This is what I interpret happened to me. That means this, and I don't care what you say. I don't care about alternate explanations. I don't need to show you any evidence of whatever I'm saying. That doesn't get us anywhere. In fact, I think that kind of takes us backwards, honestly. But that thought is out there. That way of thinking, detrimental to the subject in every way I can imagine, is out there. So they're not only emotionally tied to their perspective, they're refusing to entertain the possibility of an alternate one, despite the evidence. That's weird to me.
Well, I just want to I'm sorry, Sean.
No, go ahead. That's fine, miss.
I was just going to say, I just want to switch gears a little bit real quick and go from, the tall man of the woods to the short man of the forest there, or whatever you want to call it. But you touched on the Orang Pendek project. What's the latest with that? Any updates or anything interesting going on?
Well, I have one more batch of casts coming my way. I've discontinued the project for now just because I'm unemployed, really. The show airs, I think, in January, and that's when, at least that's what I was told. They could always change things. And, it's TV, so we don't know if there's a next season until the one we just filmed gets aired, right? So I hope we get invited back, of course, but I won't know that until the shows start airing. So right now I'm unemployed. I said, well, you know what, the Orang Pendek project, I love it. I've got so much data already from it. I've got so many footprints and photographs and stories and stuff already. I figured, you know what, let's just stop this now because it's expensive, honestly. Mailing anything back and forth from Sumatra taxes you. And, I may be on television, but I'm not rich. My bills are paid, but I'm not rich. I'm not no millionaire or something like that, or even close, really. But still, instead of taxing my pocketbook when I don't know if I'm employed for the next year, I thought I would just put a halt on it and try to dive in a bit to the Orang Pendek project and start the analysis side of things. Start collecting things into book form. Perhaps I can put a book out on the subject and do some follow-up work with what I have, because I've got so many so many bots on this stuff, but I've got too much to do, man. So
and just a couple more real quick ones and we'll get you out of here, man, because it's I think past our bedtime too. But if you were to wake up tomorrow, turn on the TV, and on the news they said Bigfoot has been confirmed, officially accepted as scientifically existing and real. What would that mean to you? Where would your life go from here? Would it change?
I don't think it would change very much, honestly. I've thought a lot about that. That day will happen. I'm not trying to prove they're real, because proof is going to come in the form of a bullet or a dead Bigfoot from some way. And I'm not going to kill one of these things. I've got no intention to do that. So I'm not going to prove it. Somebody will, though, eventually. Maybe, the Texas guys will shoot one. I hope not, but maybe they will. And I say the Texas guys, the woodape.org guys, they're out there trying, I think. And maybe there's probably a small number of hunters who are actually giving it a real shot out there. Or some guy, I think is even more likely, some logger or something will roll one down to his truck on the way to work in the morning or something. But eventually one will come in dead. And that is what it's going to take. So when that one does come in dead and it's a done deal and they actually announce it on the news or whatever, or I get wind of it beforehand or something, I'll be sad in a way, it's like in the same way that if I heard that, I don't know, like Japanese whaling vessels killed a blue whale or something like that, I'd be sad for that too. A sentient, intelligent, being of some sort being killed for human need, or in this case, curiosity. I think that's a tragedy, really. But at the same time, that's kind of where the fun begins, I guess. We all want these things to be proven real because we're all kind of greedy with our own curiosity in a way. We all want to see that Diane Fossey documentary in the Siskiyou Mountains studying the family group of Sasquatches for 6 months and seeing what they do. We all want to learn more about them because we love them in a way, love them for Myriad. And that's not that kind of love really, but we all love these things, and I don't think there's any way around it. And I guess that's probably actually kind of putting a button on my thoughts in a way. I'm not trying to prove they're real. I know they're real. I don't care what other people think. Never really have, honestly. But I do want people to love these things. I want them to just fall in love with Bigfoots, basically. Because since I know they're real and I know eventually a dead one will come in, I'm hoping that if I can encourage people to enjoy Sasquatches and enjoy the outdoors in the meantime, because you got to get outdoors to love a Bigfoot in person, and I don't care how they love them, the UFO riding, like I'm an ape guy, right? Bigfoots are some sort of ape thing. Yeah. The ape people love them for their reasons. The UFO people love them for their reasons. The mind speak people love them for their reasons. The protectors of the forest teacher folk love them for their I don't care why you love Bigfoot, as long as you do. Because when discovery happens, when the dead one's here, that's when they're going to need us. They're going to need us to protect them. Because we're the ones that love them already. They're going to need and they're going to have an army of weirdos and eccentric people behind them advocating for their protection and the protection of the land they live on. That's when they're going to need us, and we're exactly the kind of people they're going to need. The weirdos who will stop at nothing to get our point across. Imagine, even 5,000 Bigfoot weirdos on the White House lawn screaming about Bigfoot stuff. You know what I mean? We're the exact kind of person that the powers that be don't want on their doorstep. And that's exactly who the Bigfoots will have. Us. It's like the island of misfit toys raising an army.
Wow, that's so. How you said that's just.
I'm ready to get a megaphone.
I'm telling you, man.
Right.
So how far of a drive? How far of a drive do we have to Washington? We'll wait till the next term in January.
3.5 hours. 3.5 hours.
All right, buddy.
The key is to wait till there's actually something to protest about instead of yammering about nothing. Because now we'll just get pointed at as a freak. But after discovery, when there's no more plausible deniability, imagine us then. Imagine the powerhouse of our political force and our voices then. And the weirdos will still be in tow. Like the weirder the belief about Bigfoot, the more I think the more aggrandizement, like the more love and the more oomph those people will put behind their feelings for the species to protect them as an animal, protect them as a sentient being, a creature on our planet that's very similar to us, and most importantly, and the only thing we can do now, I might add, protect their land. They don't need us yet. They'll need us after discovery.
Well, I definitely hate to not end the question, like the thing on that question, but I have one more question, and I think we'll play one quick game, and we'll get you on out of here.
Okay.
When it's all said and done, not to sound too somber, but at least when your research is done, which may never be, but what do you want?
When I die?
Yeah, well, no, not that.
Eulogize yourself, Cliff. Go ahead.
Oh God, yes. No, but basically, what do you want your legacy to be? What do you want people to remember as far as your contribution to this field?
Oh, I don't really think about that because it's not about me, man. It's about them, and I think that's part of the problem with the Bigfoot community. People are looking at what I can do. We haven't filmed. I mean, most people haven't filmed one because they want to be the guy holding the camera. You have to do what Mike Green did. You have to put the camera down and leave the area. Like, it's all about me. What my legacy? I don't care. My legacy, whatever that is enough to me. It's about what people who respect what I do with my knowledge. It's not about me. It's about them. Hopefully, my legacy is what I just said earlier. My legacy is to people walking away from the subject thinking that you can have a good time in the woods doing something that might be useful to land conservation and the species in general. People spending time in the woods with their family. People appreciating the land, the countryside, and the people who live in it, and the animals that live in it, and then the topography and the cleanliness of the water, the whole environmental deal, man. I think that would be an awesome legacy. But again, that's not about me. That's about them. What can we do for them? They've given us so much. Let's give something back.
Awesome. That was good. I mean, I don't know. We could have got a better answer on that one, Maz. Maz, you still there?
I am here.
You're just winding your jaw back up, right? Is that what you're doing?
Yeah, it's on the floor. Hold on one second. Let me pick it up. No, that's great, And like I said, I hated not to end on the other answer because that was perfect, and I think you said everything you needed to say with that. But I think now we'll have a little bit of fun. At least we'll try it out. Sean, I don't know if you want to introduce our next segment, Missing Link.
So go ahead, Maz. Go with it.
All right, so I'll do it. So basically, we're going to try something out now. You're our first guest, so this is trial by fire, I guess. The segment is called Missing Link. It's just a word association. We're going to throw at you, or rather I am, some words, some researchers, some things, and I just want you to say in a couple of words, maybe the first thing that comes to your mind or your thoughts on whatever I tell you.
Okay.
All right, so first one would be the Patterson-Gimlin film.
A lot of things go through my mind. 100% real is one of the things that came to me first, based on the evidence, of course, and the footprints, most importantly, at the site. Maybe not most importantly. The 50th anniversary is next year. I think that's one of the first things to pop in my head. It's 50 years now since that footage was taken. So I don't know about you guys, but I'll see you all at the site, man. 1:15, Friday, October 20th, 2017.
I think Sean's paying for the tickets, so we're good. But
There. How kind of me.
Next one would be Godzilla.
For some reason, Matthew Broderick jumped in my head. It's because of that kind of mediocre version of Godzilla that popped up, it's in the 80s, early 90s, that movie. Don't get me wrong, I love Matthew Broderick or anything like that. Save, like Ferris, Ferris Bueller, one of my favorite bands, Save Ferris, named their line in the movie, right? But I love that movie too, even though it was kind of crappy, and which kind of shows my love for the Godzilla thing in general. If I can love the worst of the Godzilla movies, I mean, you can imagine, about the good ones. I can barely sleep at night thinking about them. It's awesome.
And there's something magical about a man in a suit. So, but which that one didn't have. But
hey, wait a minute.
Not that. Hey, that a man in a Godzilla suit. Let me clarify. I'm sorry.
I like how they made it look like an iguana, though. I really think the iguana look for the Godzilla thing is a good one. I like it. It's not true. It's not. The Godzilla nerds probably cry themselves to sleep at night about it. But I thought it was an interesting twist to it.
It was something different. They tried.
Yeah. I remember the Crunch Bar promotion that came out then, but it's because it's chocolate
right.
and I enjoy chocolate.
That Godzilla gets his ass kicked by the real Godzilla in Godzilla Final Wars, though, so it's okay.
Next one would be John Green.
John Green, I had the pleasure of meeting him once, but man, what a treasure. And he was a strong advocate of killing one, which I disagree on. And, but there's not a Bigfooter out there that I don't have some disagreements with, because we all have different minds and we're all sentient humans and we think, but we all huge bow to his feet, frankly, for being a chronicler. He wasn't exactly a field guy, and he did time in the field, don't get me wrong, but he wasn't exactly renowned for being a field guy. He was renowned for being a newspaperman and a journalist, and he documented the hell out of all that stuff in the early days, where it was more important than any time because it hadn't started yet. We all stand on John Green's shoulders, all of us. There's no two ways around it. The BFRO and its database is currently the legacy, I suppose, of the John Green style Bigfooting. Matt goes to the field and stuff, but like the BFRO site itself, where people publish reports. I mean, that's really the roots of that are John Green. And I'm not a BFRO guy. I'm not a member or anything. I work with BFRO people, sometimes, but I'm not a member or anything. I'm just recognizing what they have done, like what Matt basically and Bon Hughes, the designer of the Flats database, has done. They've done a great service to all of us, putting all that information out there publicly. And the BFRO is standing, again, squarely on John Green's shoulders. We all owe him a huge debt of gratitude. I'm sad to see him go.
Definitely agree.
So I'll just throw a couple more at you real quick, Cliff. The Bigfoot online community.
I don't really participate a whole lot in that. I do try to stop by maybe Bigfoot forums every once in a while because I was like lurking around somewhere last year or 2 years ago. I don't really remember when. And I found some just plain falsehoods being thrown about, like gossip, basically, rumors and gossip on the Bigfoot forums message board. I don't know of any other really active message. I'm not a message board guy. I mean, I have a Facebook page, but it's just all outgoing information because it's not. Since I'm on TV, I obviously have a lot of followers, right? But when you get above 5,000 friends, you no longer are a person on Facebook. You've become a public figure of some sort, and they change your status and change some things about your Facebook page. So I don't see what anybody else is doing. Like, none of that comes across. I don't have a feed. That's not what having a page is like. So I don't know what anybody else out there is doing, which is a blessing, as far as I can tell. The only place I might be visible besides my own website and blog and my own social media outlets is the Bigfoot forums, and that's really rare too because I'm just not a forum kind of guy. I'm not a social media kind of guy. I'm really not a social kind of guy. It's hard from watching me on TV, but please remember that I'm a quiet introvert, basically, a quiet introverted homebody in my real life. So as far as the online community, I don't really partake in it so much. The only reason I'm on the Bigfoot forums is because I saw like rumors being thrown around, and I said, you know what? They might as well hear it from the horse's mouth instead of its other end, So I stepped in and I started clarifying some rumors. Like, no, the show's not canceled again. This is the 10th time you guys have been saying that. No, the new season's in, or no, that's not what happened. Or I just kind of step on and clarify a few things. And at first the good folks over at Bigfoot Forum, like, who is this faker pretending to be Cliff? Which I thought was funny. And a couple of them emailed me, like, who knew me or whatever. But when they figured out it was actually me, a lot of those rumors went away, or they would just take the action of, hey, I heard this. Is this true? And being, at least in that one place in the Bigfoot community, kind of allowed me to step up and clarify some things. Like, well, that's not exactly what it is, although I can see why you thought that. Then I would go on and explain or whatever. So that's what I think about the online communities. I don't really participate. I'm not really a personality kind of guy, and I don't think it should be about us. I think it should be about the creatures. I think it should be about Bigfoot, not us. So remove ourselves from it, and they'll be far better off.
Excellent. And our last one, which is something that kind of goes with the Bigfoot online community a little bit, pareidolia.
It's rampant, absolutely rampant. It's more common than the common cold. Easily 4 out of 5 things that I get are examples of it. Or if they're not actual pareidolia, it's, even if that is a Bigfoot hiding behind that tree in the shadows, good is it? It doesn't do us any good. So I think by and large they're mostly pareidolia. Like all these people who take photographs and then say, "Oh, look at this Bigfoot and this." I didn't see it at the time, but this one, those almost never pan out. Almost never. I think there might be one or two circumstances where I'm wrong, but I was taking pictures, and 6 years later I went back and I saw that. Okay, maybe is probably almost always the best answer you can give, because it's truthful. I try to always be truthful with my assessments of data of any sort. So if anybody, like anybody who wants to try to get in contact with me to show me your Bigfoot picture, you're welcome to ask me anything you'd like. But be careful, because I'm going to tell you the truth, and it may not be what you want to hear. Pareidolia is rampant, and I see it almost every day.
Well, that's great stuff, and I think we all echo that at least. But just to get you out on this, is there anything you want to promote, anything you want to talk about, any projects you're working on, or anything you want to say just as a final thought?
Well, there's kind of a lot going on, I guess. I mean, I'm just started working on the edit of the second Bigfoot road trip. I'll be pie in the sky optimistic and say hopefully by summer that'll be out. Today I was filming in the backyard with Flippy on his documentary, Crappy Little Dreams. I've been helping him out a lot with that. I'm really excited to see some of the project coming together and seeing some segments in the film. It's going to be a lot of fun. Not quite your normal Bigfoot movie, so everybody should hold on to their hats for that one. Other than that, let's see. I'm speaking in San Francisco at the Balboa Theater on the weekend of March 10th in San Francisco. Check out my Facebook page for that for more details. And other than that, I'm just kind of, honestly, I'm hanging out, laying low, and going to the woods for day walks and playing music a lot. So a lot of people ask me, like, Cliff, when can I hear some of your music? And it turns out that hopefully really soon, I'm getting my music website up and off the ground, where basically I can put out some songs that I've been working on and just tunes and, that sort of thing. If anybody's interested, because I have, a fair number of people on my social media, and I get asked about my music a lot. And I figured, well, you know what? Why don't I just put some out? I'll put out some for free, some out for $1, and, maybe some people will want it. Maybe they can buy me a beer. So it's kind of a non-Bigfoot related answer, which is kind of nice to get out from underneath the big feet every once in a while. So, so hopefully the next couple months you'll be seeing the fruition of my music website, kind of offering you what sort of like weird, quirky tonalities bounce around inside my head.
Awesome.
That's excellent. Yeah.
Well, I know anybody who hasn't had an opportunity to see you speak, because I know we were at Ohio, and definitely worth checking out. So anybody in San Francisco area, definitely do that. And we're excited to see what else you have to bring to the table, and just glad you can enjoy some time away from Bigfoot.
Yeah, it's been nice. Although I can't say that it's been very far away. I mean, I get new footprints were found just this past week on the Atlantic Peninsula. I'm hopefully going to go up there next week and check out the casts. 2 weeks ago in the same area, different individuals' footprints were found in the Atlantic Peninsula. Again, the same witness pulled those tracks as well, and it's a known individual in that case, where we have 2 or 3 other casts from that same individual. There's always something going on. I mean, so I have to work hard to get away from Bigfoot. I mean, at this point, there's always something going on. People who think, why don't we see them more? How come they're just removed from the subject. I can barely find time to breathe under all the stuff that's coming our way lately, like my way lately, honestly. And that's just me. When I get together with the other folks from the show or other researchers and stuff like that, everybody's got stuff happening, it seems. It's like Bigfoot's the best kept secret in North America or something. So it is nice to get away from Bigfoot, but I know it never lasts. And not that I want it to, but sometimes a little balance is nice.
Right.
Excellent. So we're just going to get to our last segment, but definitely I know I'll let the other guys talk, but we really appreciate it. It's kind of ironic I'm asking you about your time away from Bigfoot as we're doing a podcast talking about it, but
oh yeah, well, no, it's appropriate. This is the only time you could really ask me that, because the rest of it I'm just 6 days a week, 12 hours a day. So
yeah, so we appreciate it. We know you're a busy guy, and this was great, very informative for us, and I'm sure the listeners are going to eat it up. Can't thank you enough, man.
Oh, I'm happy to do it, man. Because I mean, I know you guys, so it's not like I'm talking to somebody on some LA radio station where I kind of have to watch my P's and Q's and stuff. You guys are Bigfoot nerds like me. I mean, we're all in the same boat. We come from the same mold. So, and you can hear it in my voice. I'm just a little bit more relaxed. I'm just like going on longer than I usually do. Not that I have more to say, but I'm just, it's just us. We're just hanging out. We're just friends. So I'm not worried about it. It's kind of fun.
Absolutely, and that's
Indeed.
what we're trying to go with the show. Is just a relaxed, just a couple guys BSing. So, sorry, Sean, were you saying something?
Nope, I was just agreeing. I was enjoying this. This is a good little podcast we got going on here. Good conversation.
Excellent. Yeah. I do have one question for you, though, Cliff. Your dog. I'm a dog lover. How do you say your dog's name? Is it Sochi?
Yeah, Sochi.
How did you come up with that name?
Hitl. Because I was a teacher at when I was a teacher in Southern California. I taught at Ferguson Elementary School in Hawaiian Gardens.
Uh-huh.
Hawaiian Gardens sounds like a lovely tropical paradise, but it's not. It's essentially a very poor Latino neighborhood, and where 95% of my students were Latinos, usually from Michoacan, Mexico area. And that's where I got to learn. That's where I really brushed up on my Spanish skills, and so many beautiful, wonderful things happened there. It was a great opportunity. But every year or two, I would have a girl in my class named Sochi, and I've never really been exposed to that name very often. And I figured, dude, it starts with an X. It ends in a TL. How cool is that? And I've always told myself that if I ever had a little baby girl or a female dog of some sort, I would name them Sochi, whatever one came first. And my dog came first. So I followed through on my promise to myself, and I named her Sochi. It comes from the Nahuatl language, which is the language of the Aztec people. The Aztecs, of course, occupied Mexico City when Cortez came over and, dominated them and drove them into genocidal, the genocidal abyss, basically. Unfortunately, although there are plenty of Aztecs still alive, they're not all gone by any means. They've just been driven under culturally. But their language, Sochi, means flower, and I always thought that was a beautiful name. And it starts with an X. How cool is that? So yeah, that's my name.
Thanks.
And folks, finally, our Footprints in History segment, where we take a piece of Bigfoot evidence, for this episode, Bigfoot evidence. We're going to talk about it a little bit, discuss it, and just showcase a little bit of Bigfootery goodness. So, Maz, this week what did we select this week?
Oh, we selected the Grays Harbor incident, or it's kind of a stretch of incidents, primarily focusing on the day April 22nd, 1982. I figured we picked something Pacific Northwest in honor of our guest. Basically, from what I understand, like I said, April 22nd, 1982, Dennis Hereford basically was contacted in regards to a number of large tracks. He went out to check them out. From what he found, I believe there were 2 tracks at the time. He found a hair sample, which he had sent in. At that same time, he was contacted for other prints that were 9 miles away. And then this kind of went on a stretch of actually like a couple of months. And all these prints looked very similar. None were the same length or size, but looked to be humanoid. And what makes this so special is that it was really one of the first cases where a sheriff, was a witness. And, of course, back then it was very dangerous for anybody in law enforcement to kind of come forward and talk about these things. So it makes it more credible, and these are some of the most well-respected casts that are around. So I don't know if Cliff, you had anything to add to that, if I said anything wrong, or you have the cast. So
yeah, I don't have the entire collection. There's something like 8 of them out there. I don't know. I don't think I have all 8. I have 6 or so. I have to think about how many I have. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I have 7 of them. I think an interesting aspect of the Grays Harbor events is that it happened at several different locations. A number of different researchers were there, and actually a really interesting specimen was added, which I detailed the findings of in Bigfoot Road Trip, like my first DVD or whatever. This woman wrote to me, at North American Bigfoot at Gmail, my email address, and she says, "I know Bigfoots are real. I love Bigfoots. My mom has a cast in the garage." Oh, really? And I wrote her back, and she starts telling me, yeah, in 1980, I think early 80s, there's this blah, 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 police officers, blah, 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 blah. And the more she's telling me, the more I realize, holy crap, this sounds like the 82 event in Grays Harbor. I ask where she lives. She lives in Elma, right there in Grace Harbor County. And I have to keep following up on it. And it turns out that, Mom, back in 82, her husband, now deceased, but her husband was a logger. And one of his logging buddies came down and knocked on the door and said, "Hey, there's tracks, Bigfoot tracks up on the hill. You want to come up?" And he wanted to go. She really didn't, but she went anyway. They went up on the hill. And when they got there, a police line, like a police tape sort of situation, was up. And they were just kind of finishing up casting some footprints and stuff. And she didn't know any of these people. But she said at one point, after all the police tape was taken down, and a gentleman from Washington State University said, "We're done casting. We have a little extra plaster. Would you like to cast one?" And she says, "Yeah, of course." So he gave her plaster. Well, who do you think that gentleman was? And we don't know for sure, but everything about him screams Dr. Grover Krantz, because he was on the scene. And he was the anthropologist from Washington State University. So basically, as far as I can tell, Dr. Grover Krantz actually gave some plaster to cast the footprint with. Plaster. So she cast one of the bad ones, one of the small ones. Well, okay, now fast forward however many years till today, one of those bad ones is actually a half cast. And half casts are some of the more compelling evidence for Sasquatch footprints. There was actually another half cast that was cast at the same site. The creature went up and was running. The footprints were about 10 feet apart, if my memory serves me. So it was just running on the ball of its feet. And there's another half cast. And Dr. Meldrum has used that half cast for analysis, and it's in his book and blah, blah, blah. You can go read about it. But it turns out this woman had another one that no one even knew about. And it was the opposite foot from the same event. So another whole cast surface that nobody knew about that was sitting in this woman's garage for the last 30, 40 years. A phenomenal opportunity. She didn't think that it was a big deal. It blew my mind.
Incredible.
I don't know if I have that on my website or not, but it's definitely in Bigfoot Road Trip. So I think that's something. And you know what? There are still retired cops up in the Grays Harbor area. They're all retired now, of course. But there are other original casts out there in these people's garages that they probably aren't thinking about. Maybe grandpa passed away and now it's in the hands of who knows who. There's casts in people's garage from this event up there because people from the community came out and cast footprints as well. And one by one, they're kind of surfacing. I think we went from 6 to 8 or 9 casts, I think, in just a few years of what public knowledge had about this particular event. So yeah, it's a phenomenal event, and it's one that keeps yielding more surprises.
Absolutely. Well, man, incredible background there. I can't. Amazing.
I picked the right one to talk about, man. That was just dumb luck, but I just can't tell you how excited I get listening to you talk about casts, and it's one of the coolest gifts you can get. Honestly, is just holding a cast. But I think a while back, maybe like a couple months ago, I got a half track from you. Do you know, was that? I know it was from Grays Harbor. Was that possibly that one, or was that the more famous half track? Do you know?
I'm not sure. I'd have to look at it. I don't remember. It was probably one of mine. It was probably one of mine, I guess. The newer ones. If you look at it, that cast is interesting because not only is it a half cast and it's from a famous event and blah blah blah, but it also shows casting art, striations kind of in it. The same sort of markings that are in the 1967 Onion Mountain cast that for many years were just interpreted as being dramatic lithics. It's not. They're casting artifacts, and this shows the same feature. Basically, in a highly wicking substrate, a substrate that like sucks the moisture out of something like plaster. When you pour plaster in the middle and it starts flowing outwards towards the center where you poured it into the footprint, it starts folding over itself because it's kind of dry and the water's being sucked out by the substrate, and it kind of folds over on itself, creating the illusion of dramatic lithics. And you can plainly see those in that cast, as well as the divot where the plaster first hit the footprint, I might add. But that's another important thing about the cast. It doesn't take away from the authenticity of the cast. It just shows that those marks in other castings are really casting artifacts and not dramatic lithics. I think the cast is 100% legitimate based on the anatomy that can be inferred from it and the location and blah, 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 et cetera, et cetera. But those particular markings are interesting, the context they give for the other markings in the other casts, like the 67 Onion Mountain cast.
I'm going to have to pull it out and take a look. I know for sure it was the one of the 82 half tracks, but I just didn't know which, because I didn't even know about this other one. So, like, I love hearing about this. And like Sean said, this is couldn't ask for better background information or a better event to pick.
One of the best documented by far, because the police were involved and they know how to document stuff.
I mean, even one of the large prints, if I'm remembering correctly, I got one from Dr. Meldrum, and it was funny watching one of the shows on TV. It was another show with Les, and he was trying to fake footprints and stuff, and he took them back to Meldrum's office, and he picked that one right out. He said, "It's funny, a lot of people use that for fake footprints," and he recognized it because he knew what track it was, but. I mean, that thing is there's a lot of detail in that. And I'd like to see this half track, though. I haven't seen that one. So, yeah, it'd be interesting. I'll have to. Do you have
Send me an email. I can send you a picture. Yeah, if you send me an email, I can send you a picture of the ones I have, and you can see the differences.
Great.
And you can also see how it's the same individual.
Amazing. Well, Sean, I think we can let Cliff get out of here. That was just a great evening.
It was fantastic.
I don't even know what to say.
Yeah, it was fantastic, Cliff. Thanks for joining us. And I'm honestly just kind of blown away by the background, and our little footprints in history just kind of gave us far more information than I think we expected.
Oh, there's so much more than that out there. You can do a show or two on that thing. Phenomenal tracks, great detail. There's very few footprint tracks that have that much clarity in them that you can infer the underlying bone structure, particularly the Hereford cast, where there's like the cracks down the middle of it and everything, which are the result of the lateral expansion of the fat pad at the bottom of the foot. I mean, those tracks are really phenomenal pieces of evidence. So yeah, I think you guys made a good choice.
Well, again, thank you, Cliff, genuinely for joining us. This was fantastic. People are going to love this, and we appreciate your time and just talking with you.
Definitely.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I appreciate you guys having me on, man. It's always nice to talk about with fellow Bigfoot nerds about stuff that only Bigfoot nerds care about. NBC or whoever doesn't really care about the details. They just want to laugh and go on to something else. But with you guys, I can get my hands dirty a little bit, and get in there and start talking about some of the stuff that kind of, that makes the subject and the evidence so appealing and appetizing for us, So thank you guys very much. I appreciate it.
No problem. Thank you, Cliff. Be safe out there. Have safe travels, and we look forward to the show and just look forward to hearing from you again.
Okay, cool, man. Yeah, if you guys need me, you know where to find me. I answer most emails. Can't get to them all, but I answer most of them, and I'm happy to interact with whoever, man. So if you guys need me, give me a shout.
All right. Thank you very much.
All right, later, guys.
Good night, Cliff.
All right. Thanks.
Bye. Take it easy.
All right, guys. Wow. That was fantastic. You've been listening to the Nocturnal Journal, brought to you by Pennsylvania Sasquatch Research, Tony Merkel, Sean Forker, Maz Adams, Dave Groves. Check us out on Facebook, Pennsylvania Sasquatch Research.